Caffeine is the most widely accepted and loved psychoactive drug in the world. But it's not just the love of chemicals that keeps people coming back for more. Most routines keep caffeine nearby in the morning, and sometimes later, because it makes starting the day less of a struggle. The effect isn't meant to be dramatic. It just reduces the feeling of tasks being so heavy first thing in the morning, which is often all you need to get the ball rolling for the rest of the day. Meetings with your boss don't feel so pointless, workouts stop feeling like negotiations with your body that you're losing, and the day finds its rhythm just a little bit faster. But don't take this as me saying that caffeine is some sort of wonder drug we should be taking any chance we get. It's much more akin to a small tool that soothes the first 5 minutes of effort required from us at the beginning of our day. But it can have some gnarly side effects if you're not careful. So then, how did caffeine become so normal that it barely reads as a drug? Tea and coffee didn't get popular because humanity suddenly developed good taste overnight. They got popular because, surprise surprise, being able to stay awake and be more focused was a pretty massive boon for developing societies a few thousand years ago. Tea shows up in China first as medicine, then as a daily drink by around the 3rd century CE, and from there it spreads with the culture and trade. Around the year 800 AD, seeds were sent to Japan, which caused a miniature awakening on the island, becoming a full-on ritual by the medieval period. In other words, tea got its start and stuck around by being a consistently good way to keep people doing more work with the same amount of hours in the day. Coffee's story starts a little bit later though. If you listen to the legends, they'll point you to the Ethiopian highlands, but cultivation really takes off in Yemen. For a long stretch, most of the world's coffee comes from there before Dutch traders moved plants to Java and later the Americas. Followers of Sufism use it to stay alert for night prayers, and from there the habit kinda goes viral. Mecca, Cairo, Istanbul, Venice, all the way to London. By the 16 and 1700s, coffee houses started acting more as town squares, where ideas, gossip, and businesses all ran on the same fuel. The chemistry finally catches up in the 1800s when Friedrich Runge isolates caffeine, making the stimulant no longer just a property of leaves and beans, but a measurable ingredient that can be added to almost anything. This was the pivotal moment that really separated caffeine from its coffee and tea alternatives, and instead took on a life of its own. But why did both drinks stick around for so long? Especially when they seem to be in direct competition with each other. Well, it's because they solve the same boring problem of focus, but in different parts of the world. Tea was able to settle in daily life in China because it helped people stay steady through long stretches of work, and even played a role in increasing the overall level of productivity the average worker was able to produce. Coffee moved from Yemen through the Middle East into Europe for a similar reason, attaching itself to cities, trade, and clock-based schedules. What's interesting isn't just the trivia or the origin of these well-established drinks though. The interesting part is the pattern that emerged from caffeine's uprising. When a stimulant helps people do what institutions already ask of them, and at this point over-ask, it can easily fade into our lives like the wallpaper in our living rooms. We become much more comfortable calling it a morning routine rather than a psychoactive ritual, which explains our cultural blind spot. But just because so many people do it frequently doesn't necessarily mean that it's harmless. Look at smoking, for example, especially when consumed mindlessly in everyday products. I want to take a look at some of the most common caffeine sources because most people are blissfully unaware of what they're actually consuming. How much caffeine rides along in common drinks and powders? Needing caffeine as a society always means choosing a delivery method with a dose, a speed, and a ritual. Typical ranges will look something like this. A small brewed coffee often lands around 80 to 120 milligrams, black or green tea anywhere from roughly 60 to 80, a 12-ounce Coke is about 30 to 40, energy drinks from 80 up to 200 milligrams per can, and pre-workout scoops anywhere between 140 and 400 milligrams per scoop. The reason totals keep creeping up isn't a mystery, it's more marketing. It feels like every product has caffeine in it nowadays, and that's for a really good reason. Besides being another thing on a label they can overcharge you for, companies are mighty intentional with why they add caffeine to their drinks. After having some caffeine and letting it settle in your body, you'll feel energized, and a small dopamine release helps improve your mood. This then creates an association in your brain between drinking fizzy soda and feeling pretty good for a while. Like if drinking Sprite feels like a 5-minute break from work. Makes you wonder why a bottle of Coca-Cola has almost 60 milligrams of caffeine in it, huh? But aside from marketing, we as a people are just drinking, or ingesting, more caffeine than ever before. And it might just be due to caffeine's introduction into so many different things. Over time, the sizes of drinks are getting larger and larger, which increases caffeine amounts. And I don't see many people refusing a refill or stopping after just one can of Pepsi. It's become easier than ever to drink the upper limit for what is classified as a daily limit for a healthy adult without intentionality. So then, if we're drinking so much caffeine, maybe we should see what it's doing to us. What is it that caffeine actually does inside your body, and why are people seemingly fully dependent on it? Contrary to popular belief, caffeine doesn't, and never has, add energy. That's what calories are for. Instead, caffeine interferes with the message that your body is constantly sending from the moment we get out of bed. As your restful slumber comes to an end and your morning routine begrudgingly begins, adenosine builds up and acts as a reminder that going back to sleep is always a pretty solid option. Caffeine blocks those adenosine receptors and dulls their persuasiveness, so work feels more approachable. Slightly. There's also the small dopamine lift that makes effort feel more rewarding, which is why chores stop feeling like a stalemate after a cup of coffee. For the average person, this seemingly energizing effect is quick as the caffeine hurries its way to block those pesky little sleepiness hormones. But clearance is another process altogether, and typically a very slow process at that. The average half-life for caffeine hovers at around 5 hours, with things like your genetics, hormones, smoking status, medications, and even pregnancy lengthening or shortening its duration. A mid-afternoon dose, therefore, can have measurable weight in the evening for a majority of people. Tolerance and repeated consumption complicates things even further. With frequent high intake, the adenosine system adapts, which means that your baseline alertness starts to feel like what you are caffeinated, and not having caffeine for a while feels like someone is trying to torture you slowly. And if you're anything like me, more than 24 hours without a precious dose will reveal the most stubborn little migraine. I'm not addicted, I swear. None of that is meant to be an argument for quitting cold turkey though. Shit, most scientists and doctors actively advise against doing that. This video is just meant to act as a reminder that what you consume should always be monitored in case you need to make any changes. What we eat and drink affects everything from our strength all the way to our sleep. Speaking of sleep, what are the limits of caffeine and when does it fall short of the mark? Caffeine cannot and never can do sleep's job. Alertness might be polished from 7 cups of coffee or 4 white monsters, but that's just one part of the equation. Memory consolidation, mood stability, and physical recovery will always lag behind without proper sleep, no matter how much caffeine you have, which is the cost of turning late afternoons into productivity sprints deep into the unforgiving depths of the night. It also can't sober you up once you're already intoxicated. That impairment gifted to you from being drunk remains while that drowsy feeling kinda goes away, which can actually cause drunk you to do more stupid things, just with extreme confidence. Thankfully though, there are a few things I can debunk about caffeine that aren't all bad. The old dehydration line about drinking coffee or tea is really overstated, especially at ordinary intakes. The water in those products still contributes to fluid balance while only having a mild diuretic effect on you. And don't let anyone tell you it doesn't count towards your water consumption. You're making these products with water, and neither coffee grounds nor tea leaves have magic water removal properties. Those people are just dumb. I would be careful if you intend to dry scoop pre-workout though, since that can get a little dicey fast. I must unfortunately continue though with more bad news about caffeine, this time regarding its effect past a certain dosage. Caffeine doses have a ceiling for usefulness. Its effects tend to follow the principle of diminishing returns, at least for the benefits the average person can appreciate. Beyond a modest range, extra caffeine mostly buys you tremors, impatience, and messy work, especially in tasks that reward calm strength or fine motor control. In practice, most adults would benefit from maintaining a daily total that stays comfortably under the upper limit. I would also recommend a firm cutoff roughly 8 hours before planned sleep, even if I personally refuse to follow that advice myself. These rules aren't meant to be glamorous, but rather act as guidelines. They keep the good parts of caffeine without having to hate yourself when you can't sleep and wake up feeling like shit. There are a few things that I thought I would add here at the end regarding the health effects that caffeine can have at its extreme limits. And I'm talking things that you should never even get close to. Too much caffeine can affect your heart rate, cause really bad headaches, or intensify anxiety. And as someone on medication for anxiety, trust me, you don't want to experience a caffeine-induced anxiety attack. 1200 milligrams is known as lethal for the average healthy adult, which may sound like a lot until you realize Panera offers free refills on their 270 milligram Death Lemonade. It literally killed someone, allegedly. So please, drink responsibly. That's all for me. I'm gonna go drink another cup of my favorite dirty bean water like the massive hypocrite that I am. See ya.